Oh, Steve, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
I apologize for that. I just got a note that said that the broadcast hadn't, we fixed that problem. Let's start over. Hi, everybody.
Okay.
I deeply apologize for that. We had a bit of a false start there. So welcome. We have about 5 minutes now to make up for that. So I genuinely apologize for that small hiccup. Steve and I had actually started, and some people hadn't actually been admitted. So let's go ahead and get rolling. Mission statement here, guys. First of all, Dan Colano, Steve Fox is with me today, and we'll be doing introductions shortly. Real quick, we're going to get right rolling into it. The mission statement of our skill series here. This is to deliver immediate value to you guys today with honesty and with actionable advice for today. So our goal is not to give you theoretical or hypothetical advice, but rather things that you can take to your organization today and get a value out of literally today, if not this week. With an eye toward technology best practices for water industry professionals. So what does that mean? We're gonna be making this as entertaining as we possibly can. We're also gonna make this as interactive as we can. We really, really want you guys to care, pay attention, and get value out of this. We do not want to waste an hour of your time. So what to expect, we're gonna go through learning objectives. We're gonna survey you guys. There are gonna be some polls. This is a key ingredient to understanding where your peers are at. 3, understanding what good looks like. That'll be my spiel. I'll go into, from our experience in the industry, working with cross-connection control professionals, some of the best practices that we've seen and the best uses of data management practices and technology practices. And then we're going to flip the table over to Steve. Steve is our resident expert. When I say resident, he doesn't work for us, but when I say resident on this webinar, he's the guy. He has infinite wisdom on this topic, and we're going to be asking him a host of questions. Administratively, you'll see this panel. There's 2 things that are important here. If you want to ask questions, you'll see questions there. Click that. You can post a questions. I'll facilitate that, especially with the session with Steve. That's where I'll be asking those questions. And secondly, we're also going to be polling the audience, which we'll do in the beginning. That should pop up on your screen, and we'll have an active live poll that will be sent out at the end, just by the numbers, no names, no organizations, just so you guys have those insights. So learning objectives, we're gonna first help you guys understand what your peers are struggling with. This will be a result of the polls. This is always sort of a fan favorite exercise. By the numbers, are your peers looking at the same or different challenges? Where are people at? Secondly, reframe requirements on a solid data program. 3, identify the business case for leveling up your technology. 4, articulate the data management best practices. And 5, we just have some gives. So as a result of attending this, we're going to share with you guys a couple things. 1, the anonymized survey results. So strictly by the numbers. There's some interesting questions, I think, and responses that will come out of this. We'll share those just by the numbers with you guys. 2 is a buyer's guide. Buyer's guide meaning if you're looking to level up, and this is not a utility cloud sales conversation. This is a period. If you're looking at any program, these are some of the things that are important. These are some of the attributes of any software, whether you decide to level up this year, next year, what have you, some of the things that you probably want to be looking at in terms of requirements. And then finally, one thing we do is only by request, we'll send out a, hey, do you want to be part of this board group, which is an opportunity for you guys to opt in to basically an email listserv for you guys to bounce questions off of each other. That has been in other skill series we've done. That's been an interesting give for folks. Again, only if you want to. It's by default, we're assuming you don't want to do that, but if you do, we'll give you the option. All right, so let's go right into the what does good look like. This will be a bit more heavy on me talking, and then, as I said, we're going to hear way more from Steve. Steve, of course, we talked about this beforehand. Feel free to weigh on in if I'm missing anything or if you have anything to add here.
What does I can talk?
What's that? Oh yeah, you can talk.
Oh, no, no, no,
I believe it. So yeah, uh, and please do. That's why we have you on here. Um, so we're going to try and get through this pretty quickly, and the reason for that is that a lot of this is the stuff that I'll be sending afterwards. So from a data, Steve's going to talk about a bit more generally how good data management practices fit into a high quality program overall. I'm going to start a little bit smaller, just on the data and technology side. So from a technology standpoint, what we've seen be successful, great programs have three common things: consistency, enforceability, and transparency. So in order to do those three things, what we've seen is that the technology in use, again, I do work for a technology company, and I would love to sell people software, but our goal here is to help you. And so regardless of technology, there are other providers out there that do these things. These are the things that you want to make sure broadly you have. So field friendliness, so a mobile application that can effectively capture data from the field. Two, a technology or platform that can aggregate that data and report it in a meaningful way to either internally or externally to your customers, to your inspectors, what have you. Three, that it's customer centric, meaning that it's able to help you communicate the results and consequences to your customers, the end customers. And finally, that it's scalable. What I mean by scalable is that oftentimes, like this is a work activity. Cross-connection control is a very specific type of work activity, and it's often important that this technology, whatever technology you do adopt, is scalable, maybe not just to this one point solution, but that can at least be integrated into other systems and actioned by other parts of the business. So I'm not going to go through all this in detail. What I do want to do is show you a glimpse. This will be in our product. Again, the intent here is not to be a sales pitch, but I want to show you it in a little bit more of an interactive way. So first, field friendly. Again, we will send this stuff to you guys. But that is the main point here, is that someone in the field, regardless of who that is, whether that's the utility who is the inspector or it's a contractor who is the inspector, that is very easy and field friendly. You have offline capabilities, you have the ability to really understand what task is due next, collecting the right data, all those things. Geospatial, where the work needs to be performed. Reportable. So reportable is that the data can be analyzed and insightful. So notification. So based on the result, that the appropriate parties are notified at the right time for the right reason. Understanding progress against the initiative as a whole. Certainly annual reporting, quarterly reporting, whatever your cadence of reporting is, that oftentimes very cumbersome or laborious exercise is as streamlined and and sort of as high quality as can be. And fourth, that you have basically all the requisite asset details, the work history details, and I would even go further and say the right people details to report against on an ad hoc basis for your own needs. And customer-centric. So customer-centric, again, this is cross-connection control is one of those tasks that relies on communicating results and being transparent with customers. So having ideally multiple forms of ways of communicating results and consequences to your stakeholders. So that can include text, email, letter automation, and additional ways to insert more about the program, which we'll talk about in a second. And finally, scalable. So one thing that Steve and I have been chatting a bit, and one thing that he's seeing, for instance, is that more and more the folks who are running the cross-connection control programs are being now combined with the fog programs, ideally you don't have one solution for every single different type of work that you do across your organization. So the more scalable, the more it can be utilized. Certainly there's a cost benefit to spreading that across the organization, but there's also just having a single source of truth internally for where people can look to get the right data. All right, good. So I'm gonna I want to show you some of this in action. So I'm gonna try and spend a very little amount of time here just to give you sort of the flyby on this. And what I want to start with is really from the point of view of someone in the field, and then we'll go into someone in sort of the office. So let's say we're talking about an inspector here, and again, thinking back on those requirements, let's put some of those into action. Number one is just scheduling, like knowing what work needs to be performed, what inspection needs to be performed at the right place, at the right time, for the right reason. So a simple view of, I'm an inspector, I go into this platform, I know that I'm doing the right work and that is served up to me in an easy way. So once you're actually performing the work, this is really the most important part of this process. So what we've seen time and time again is that basically, if you don't have quality data in, you can't do much about that. You can't report against it, you can't trigger it, you can't do anything that's useful. So the name of the game, as simple as it sounds, is data quality. So there are a couple kind of secret sauces, if you will, to making the data ingestion piece work. And a lot of that lies in how the form gets configured. So as you see here, for us, the forms are configurable to how you want, what data you want to collect as an organization. But as we're going through, I want to point out a couple of specific things. So first things first, having quality control parameters around the data. So as you see here, I'm selecting a bunch of drop downs. That's important. That automatically, just having the defined fields for an inspector to sort of drop down on versus open text fields, things like that, that's automatically eliminating a lot of your bad data noise. But the second piece is really that on the fields where there is some sort of open text field, that there's some sort of defined parameter upon which you want to accept or reject that data. So in this case, I think the PSI rating, we want to say 60 is in play, but if we enter 65, we don't want that to be a valid response. We don't want to accept that as the organization. So wherever they apply, having the right quality control parameters in place, super critical. The second piece here is that the definition of pass-fail can be universally scaled. So this is another problem that we've seen when you have, for instance, maybe a lot of different inspectors who are eligible to perform certain inspections. You want to have a very consistent way of defining what is pass and what is fail, and you want to eliminate. That's the riskiest part of this, is to misidentify a pass or a fail, as far as we know. And in this case, we've utilized expressions. So that's saying that based on the criteria above with those dropdowns, this generates that automatic pass or fail result. So the final thing I'll talk about on the form, I think it's the final thing, is that when this work is completed, actually, there's two things. Based on the result, first things, we want to understand what's next and why. So in this case, because this inspection failed, we have a next inspection date, which is, again, solving the scheduling problem about what work needs to be performed, when and why. So if it had passed, we may have a different result there. And then finally, just generating that communication at the point of completing the work. So in this case, I'll show you guys this in a second, but how do you actually communicate the result? There's a number of ways to do that. In this particular example that we're talking about here, this is a simple form that's pre-formatted to the standard of the utility that gets generated and sent to whomever is really in this send report email. So that again, from our experience, that simplifies a lot of the taking a lot of the like complexity of generating the report, sending it, who's putting it together, who gets it when. It's really simplifying it and making that an immediate step that happens.
Hey, Daniel, before you roll on from there,
Yeah,
scroll back down to the bottom there.
yeah.
I see you've got a photo section there. Can they just use their device, their handheld device or whatever, to take a photo of whatever backflow they're testing?
Yeah, absolutely.
I've seen
So
a
that's
lot of preparers that want that. It helps us avoid getting the sidewalk tests or the drive-bys or the.
so we have a couple things that help solve for that problem. So I'm glad you brought that up, Steve. Again, I shouldn't even say we. It's important that, as Steve said, it's important that that's a requirement of something that you guys are looking at. Yes, photos. So that can there are many different types of field requirements. If you could insert photos for any number, you could have like 5 photo fields here requiring different photos of different parts of the equipment if you wanted to in this form. So definitely and those are timestamped, by the way, and stored to the asset so that you have that digital chain of custody on what's happened over time and that it's reportable. So that's one piece. The second piece, now I don't know, I'd say maybe half of our customers actually use this, but is proximity verification. So because there's a geospatial component to this and every asset has a location tied to it, and this is a mobile, our product is a mobile platform as well as a desktop platform. The ability for someone to, in some cases, you can define, or I should say not in some cases, if you so choose, you can define, you can only submit this work if you're within 10 feet of the asset. So again, quality controlling for, yes, if it was Cindy who was performing the inspection, number one, she took a photo here. We know that's timestamped, great. And secondly, you could even double down on that to say, well, Cindy wasn't even gonna, like, she can't even submit the work unless she's within 10 feet of the asset. So we're gonna double down on making sure that the right work is happening. Steve, did that answer your question?
Yes, sir. I'm starting to see that a lot more with people that are have decided to go the software route that they're wanting pictures. It helps keep the fraudulent test forms from being submitted, actually.
Definitely. Couple other things. Again, I don't want to spend too much more time here, but the let's take a look at a couple things. So one is going to be, let's dig into what a report actually would look like that gets generated at the end of that, just so you guys have a sense of that. So basically any work that gets performed across, like for any device, is stored as that digital chain of custody. First thing, attributes of the asset. The work can actually define and update the attributes of the asset, which is important. For instance, if I'm thinking in cross-connection control, if a new assembly was put in, that can be actually accomplished through the work task and updated automatically to the locations. Anything like that can actually influence the actual asset attributes. So that, again, that's all reportable. If you want to do a report that shows all devices installed before a certain date of this make and model, show me those and the pass-fail rates against those, that's all pivotable and reportable, at least in our product. So the report here what actually gets sent off is something like this. This is really however you want to define it. This is our kind of fun little demo one. But taking the data from the work that gets performed and sending that through text or email to the intended recipient. So it'll show, did you pass, did you fail, whatever additional context you want to have. You can pull in a lot of data here, and you can even do things like embed a barcode that would help the customer scan it and be brought to maybe a page that explains the utilities cross-connection control program, something like that. That's a pretty common case. Other things that I think are super important to show here, just having a view of the work that's, so from like the office point of view, administrator, what have you, you want to have a pretty good understanding of what work is going on and progress against those initiatives, and then be able to drill in and see what's going wrong or what's going right and why. So again, we'll just sort of scroll through this, but as you can see here, we have a bunch of different things. We have fog inspections, lead and copper program, all that stuff. But in this case, looking at the percentage of the tasks that we want to perform over a given period of time, how well are we doing against that? In this case, 15%. You can drill in and see the scheduling of that. You can see greater detail on the time series elements about, how did we do this week versus the next week versus the next, month over month, quarter over quarter, all that type of stuff. So visibility into progress of the initiative, that's super important. The very last thing that I really want to touch on, I'll do one honorable mention and then we'll move on. They're having multiple ways that you guys can communicate with the end customer is really important. I showed you guys a couple, which is generating that report upon completion of the work, but there are many, many other ways to do it. One of those is, if you prefer the snail mail method, having the ability to generate custom letters and send them to a print queue to be automatically sent out. That's really powerful. That's very commonly used still. The last thing I want to show, just from a reporting standpoint, I think this is the most important time saver that we see, is just having the ability simply to generate an annual report at the end of the year. So when all that data, or end of the quarter, however you so define it, the ability to pull data from across work, across assets, across people, and make that into something meaningful for the utility and store that sequentially over time, that's pretty critical. So one example here is we have this statistics report for 2019. It's actually stored sequentially for a number of years, but this is just a report that gets again, how you want to define it. This can be formatted exactly how you want. You might have different measurements that you actually want to bring in, so on and so forth. The point is, you define the report, the data that's needed, you get that in here, and you get to generate the report at a click of a button. So that's a big time saver for folks. And as far as value that gets created, we tend to see that as pretty important. That's all I really wanted to touch on to show you guys a little bit of this in motion. Steve, I don't know if you had anything before we move on to really your section, which we'll go pretty deep on. Did you have anything to add there?
Not really. I think we're using the term inspector where a lot of water purveyors are using the term tester.
Tester, sure. Yeah.
When we do inspections on the water side of the house, it's more of a survey for us, because we're going to inventory that backflow preventer. We're going to see if they have one or without. So that's an inspection to us, where the actual test backflow is a test. So
sure.
I just wanted to throw out that a lot of states call that an inspection, and a lot of states call that a survey or a test. So just terminology.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. That's a really good clarification. One thing before we actually go on to Steve's section, I wanted to quickly poll the audience. This is, as I said, we would do this. I want to get a sense. So first thing, hopefully this works for folks. I'm going to launch this. You should see a question that pops up on your screen. The question is, basically, what are you interested in learning more about? So for the next 30 minutes, we're going to deep dive with Steve. That will orient some of the questions we have. So some of the options here: how to save your time on administering your program, enhancing data quality, enhancing scalability, how to get started. Not sure. So I believe you guys can see the responses, but it's actually it's fairly even. We have the biggest one is actually I'm not sure, which is good. I think that means you'll probably get a lot of value out of this because we'll be hitting on a wide range of topics. And then we're seeing a lot, the second place one here is really how do we save time on administering my program, very common theme. And third place, enhancing data quality control, also not surprising. All right. Looks like some votes are still coming in. All right, let's close that one down. We'll go into the second one. So launching this, I believe we are running our cross-connection control program optimally. Yes or no? All right, good. So we got over 50, we got about 60% of the vote already coming in, and 70% of the folks here are saying no. Again, for the folks who are saying yes, that's great, and I'm sure you've put a lot of work into it, and that's honestly great work. Next question here, we're going to get into cross-connection control is a major priority for my operation. Again, not surprisingly, we're seeing 85% saying yes. That's good. That makes sense given the topic and the folks on the phone. Although we still have 17% that are saying no. All right, now we're getting to some meatier ones here. Actually, sorry, one more sort of like simple question, then we have two bigger questions. So who performs the inspections in your operation?
Clarify what you mean by inspection.
Yeah, so what I mean is that like actually performing the test. All right, good. It's actually pretty split. We've got, so I know at least up here in the Northeast, we got a lot of utilities that are performing that task, and then we got 57% saying contractor. All right, good. All right, next question should be meaty. This is multi-select, so you guys are welcome to select multiple boxes here. Where we waste a lot of time is resolving data quality issues, preparing reports, communicating to customers, scheduling and coordinating the work, and we don't waste any time. It's interesting, actually. So right now we see the clear number one is communicating to customers. And then the remainder is pretty split. Not many people saying we don't waste any time. But we got the remaining three really split with a slight lead on scheduling and coordinating the work. That's actually surprising. I would have thought the reporting requirements would have been a little bit higher, but hey, that's why we do these surveys. All right, and then the last question, gaps in our technology stack. And when I say technology stack, that means anything. I mean, paper and pencil is a technology stack. Microsoft Excel is a technology stack, what have you. So I'm talking about full-blown, however you define your technology. We can't customize to the uniqueness of our program. Reporting is cumbersome. Quality controlling field data is a challenge. Communicating with the customer is difficult. And onboarding a new inspector is painful.
I look at that quality control field data as a challenge, and I think about a lot of the water purveyors taking test reports through a fax machine and they can't read it. I say, that's a data challenge to me.
Yeah. Steve, how frequently do you see that?
Here in the Carolinas, that is the most used way of getting reports. Is a water purveyor receiving it either through the mail or via fax machine.
Yep. Yep. That's how, I mean, yeah. So we have about 50 or 60 customers in the Carolinas, and that's let's just say we've noticed that there as well. But I mean, all over the place. Again, I think you have a bigger data set than we do, but again, that's not surprising. We've seen it a lot as well. All right, good. So yeah, again, not surprising. This is similar to the last question in some ways. They should be correlated, but 52% communicating with the customer is difficult. 42nd place, 43% quality controlling field data is a challenge. And then it tapers off a little bit. Reporting is cumbersome, and we cannot customize the uniqueness at 29%. Okay, good. All right. Great. So that's those are the polls. Hopefully that was interesting. We're going to send out again. There'll be a little summary bar chart that we'll just send out to folks, completely anonymized. We don't even have the information there on who said what. So that will just strictly be by the numbers. Hopefully that gives you guys a little nugget. All right, good. So now we're going to transition over to Steve. So Steve, we're going to ask you some questions. Again, folks, I definitely encourage you, if you have specific questions for Steve, I'll try and feather them in here. I've got a bunch of questions that I've set up. But Steve, if you wouldn't mind, walk us through just the anatomy of a cross-connection control program.
Oh, sure. So as we know, most states in the continental U.S. at least require the water purveyor to they require them to have at least what we call a containment program. Some of them are isolation and containment, but they do require them to at least have a program. How are they taking care of things? So you have to have a program and you have to implement the program. And implementation can be difficult, especially nowadays when we're asking water purveyors to do more with less. As people are leaving, they're not being replaced, and they'll take a program and blow the dust off of it and drop it on somebody's desk and say, here's your program. Now you're in charge of it. So we do see that quite often as well. But the anatomy of a program, and there's a lot of stuff in a program, but when you knock it down to simple terms, you've got to have a plan. And that plan is going to include your ordinance, giving you turning into the authority having jurisdiction. It's going to have who's going to do the plan, how they're going to do the plan, and how they're going to educate their end users on implementing the plan. And trust me, I understand that implementing a plan can be quite political. Doesn't matter how big or small the water purveyor is, it gets political. And then there's inside that plan is how we're going to do our surveys. And I call surveys inspections if you're a regulatory survey if you're not. And that's physically getting away from the desk and going to the facility and going, there is a backflow preventer there. This is what it is. And let's get it on a frequency to get tested. And is it correct? Is it a high hazard for a high hazard or a low hazard for a low hazard? So that's what I mean by a survey. And if there is nothing there, then we've got to make a requirement for them to get something in there. And then after that, there's the compliance survey. Did they put it in correctly? And then after that, There's that third type of survey, which is I'm going to go back every so many years to make sure nothing in that facility's changed. That would change the hazard level, or have they put any illicit tappings in, or something on the other side of the backflow. And we do see that sometimes on fire systems, especially because a lot of fire systems aren't metered. So people that's where they like to get their water. The other part of that is the device test management. How are we going to do our data? How are we going to get people to test? Who can test? And what we allow them to put in our jurisdiction to be tested. And then, of course, the documentation. And the documentation has to be defendable. So once a year, the state, here in the Carolinas, the water people are in with the health people, so it's all one organization. But they'll come out and do what they call a sanitary survey of the water purveyor. In some states, it's a simple question: do you have a program? And they go yes, and then they check it off, and everything's good. But there are a lot of people that are doing those surveys now that are saying, not only do you have a program, but are you implementing that program? And they want to see some documentation. And that's where having a robust program comes into play. I saw that you said 85% of the people on the phone have a robust program. I wish that was true everywhere, and kudos to you for doing that. By the way, I want to say thank you to everybody that's on the call, because that means you really care about securing our drinking water, and I really appreciate that. So most states require it. The documentation's got to be defendable. So really, it runs into creating the plan, doing the surveys, device test management, and then managing the data, the documentation. And that documentation doesn't have to be paper; it can be electronic. So that's really the anatomy of a cross-connection control program.
All right, Steve. So I'm gonna start off a little bit broad, and then I wrote down each of those components. I have some follow-ups there, but broadly, what's the across each of those dimensions? What do you see as the biggest pitfalls or hangups? Just what are the things that people continuously struggle with?
The biggest thing that they struggle with, and I'll tell you, I've been on three sides of this. I was a manufacturer's rep. I did work for a company that managed over 400 cross-connection programs. I'm president of the ABPA Carolinas chapter now, but I'm also a state regulator, so I do see some of this stuff. The biggest thing that the water purveyors struggle with is time, and it's time to do these surveys. So, if they know they have 50 backflows in their system, it's easy to, well, I won't say it's easy, but it's data that they have. It's a known data, it's a known quantity, and they can send out letters and get those tested. But finding what we call the unknown cross connections, and part of implementing a program is finding the cross connections and making sure they're protected or eliminated. That's where I find that they struggle the most, is just finding the time to go out and actually do the physical surveys, or put together a paper survey, or do something to go out and say, hey, well, let me make sure everything's protected. So that's where I see where they struggle a lot with, and it's not always time management. It's a lot of, we just don't have the manpower, and we understand that manpower is a struggle right now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It is, and that's the every single skill series we have. That's a common theme. How do we do more with less?
Yeah.
What are the, again, tactical things here for folks that you've seen successfully navigate the journey? What have you seen as the best ways to get time back? So if it's a function of time to actually get the surveys done, what have you seen as ways that people, again, without hiring additional people or what have you, what are some of the ways that they can get time back?
Well, managing, that poll that you put out is great. Conversing with the end users takes up a lot of time, because the normal homeowner doesn't understand hydraulics of water. Right. They don't understand oh my goodness, I got a letter that says I have to test my backflow. Why is that? And then you try to explain it to them. It can be a struggle, and trust me, for all of you that are active in this, thank you, because it can be a struggle explaining to people who don't understand hydraulics and how a vacuum works, or how back pressure works. I got to say, the less time they can spend entering a lot of the successful programs that I'm looking at, they spend a lot less time typing in test sheets and calling testers and going, what is this, a 5 or a 5.0 or
Yeah.
a 0.5, or is this a pass fail? Is this I need your email, I need your phone, getting all of that stuff. I was over at a water purveyor the other day, and they must have had 30 test forms on there that they got that morning that they have to put in. Well, putting in those forms takes a long time.
Yeah.
So we see that. The other issue that I see is people just have too many things on their plate. It's rare that I see that they've got dedicated cross connection control people. It's usually they're part of the fog program, or they're part of the meter program, or they're part of another program, and this is just an additional duty. So it becomes more of a reactive program instead of a proactive program. And we see that a lot. And I wish that I could say 85% of the water purveyors in my region had a very active program, and that was the #1 priority on their list, but it's not.
I've got several follow-up questions.
Yep.
Some of these coming from the board. I'll sort of consolidate them. One actually is a comment to what you just said, and that's, I actually was surprised that more people didn't say that the data quality was an issue, because to your comment, Steve, I actually put data quality and reporting go hand in hand. Like, you can't do good reporting if you don't have good data quality. And that's what we bump into constantly when we're out talking to folks in the market is resolving is this a 5 or is this a 4, or did you, like, this doesn't make any sense here, that type of thing. And then if you don't have that right, how can you the reporting becomes a real challenge, or maybe you only identify it when you actually report. Talk to me a little bit about just what do you think is the, if you're sitting in the shoes of probably many of the folks on this call, and they maybe don't have a super active program in place. Number one, why do you think that is, and how do you think you can help them build a case toward investing generally, not just in technology, but in this area?
Well, I look at a cross connection control program as also an insurance policy.
Yeah.
It's very tough for your state organizations to defend you if you're not doing what their basic regulations require. So that's one aspect of it. It is an insurance policy. What would the prudent man do? Ask your question again, because I'm old.
So yeah, I mean, I think that's, so you answered the why is it a challenge, and then if you were making the case for for better investment in a quality cross connection control program, what are kind of the key talking points that you would use, whether you're looking for investment in technology or manpower? What are some of those things that are the most insightful talking
That's
points?
a good question. I think a lot of people on the call may not know that there are third-party companies out there that can take care of a program for you.
Yep.
And not only the software side, but they can do the surveys. They can do 100%, or you can pick and choose what they want. If you just want them to mail your letters, they can just mail your letters, which, by the way, is another huge time killer for a lot of people, is getting that letter, getting it printed, getting it in an envelope, licking the envelope, and mailing it out. But there are a lot of third-party companies that can do that for you. And sometimes if you do the math, it's actually cheaper to bring them in. Number one, they don't call in sick. That's one of the nice things about data. I know that I'm not here to sell data, but if you go with the software program doesn't call in sick normally. So it's there. It's like having, most of the people that I know that are successful with this have either a third party helping them, or they've got dedicated people to cross connection control. Some of the large utilities down here have 5 or 6 people dedicated to cross connection control. That is tough. But if you're a one person and you're also taking care of meters and fog and data entry and all that other stuff, I would say consider bringing in a third party to do that. It's actually very, very reasonably priced, and there's not a lot of them, so but there are 3 or 4 throughout the country that can do just the software side or do the entire, just come in, and when the homeowner calls and says, why are you asking me to test my irrigation system, it's their people who get the phone call, and it's their people who can answer that conversation. So I know a lot of the people nationwide are going that route, just to pull their people out of that and getting them to doing the more day-to-day stuff, so that the program's more proactive than reactive. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, that was great. And I think maybe this is related, but I mean, for folks on the phone, just any any general, that was a piece of advice, and that might be the answer to this question. But any other sort of top pieces of advice, you know, when running a program or looking to up level it, you certainly, right there, that was a piece of advice, and that might be the main takeaway, to help bring in other parties to support it, whether that's for any number of the different boxes you have to check in the work that you need to do. Any other big ticket items that you think can really level up the quality and reduce the amount of burden or effort that goes into it?
Yeah, and I, like I said, I'm not here, I don't work for your company, but for people to go with a software program that can take away the time to do the data entry, to have a tester log all the information and send it right in, everything's said and done. Then all you have to do is look at your desktop and say, yes, I've got 15 tested today and 15 failed to whatever. That's a big part of it. And again, most of the successful programs I see have a software program, or they have IT people in-house that have built a software program for them.
Yep. Yes. Good. Well, Steve, we're getting close to the hour. So what I actually, one last question for you, which is, you know, you're really deeply embedded in this community and in this practice. What are some other ways that people can get involved, learn more, etc., that you would be willing to share?
Oh, to learn more about the backflow world and you know, the American Backflow Prevention Association. I can't say enough good things. I'm president of the Carolinas chapter, but I got to tell you, it's just title only. I've got a wonderful board that takes care of things. We do 2 to 4 trainings a year, 2 usually dedicated to repair, 2 usually dedicated to other educational aspects of backflow. University of Florida Trio Center, they do an outstanding job training people, and they've also got a survey and inspection component, and a program administration component that they're teaching now, and that's going to go on the road soon. We're going to bring it to the Carolinas soon. ASSE has wonderful survey and inspection. They got a 40-hour national certification for surveyors, and also repair and testing. So there are a lot of great ways to get the backflow information out there. But the leaders in the industry are ABPA and University of Florida Trio. IATMO does a wonderful job. They're related to ASSE. So
great.
That's my plug for all of those guys.
Yes. Yeah, good. I'm looking at the questions and I think I've gotten through most. There are a number here, guys, that are specific to our product, which I don't want to answer. I think if folks are okay with it, the question, we can actually take individual follow-ups on those ones, if that's I think that's the ideal way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think since we're coming up on the hour, I want to just do a quick summary. First, Steve, really thank you again. On behalf of my whole company and myself, just really appreciative of your time. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I just really appreciate your willingness to do this.
Yep, and anybody can grab me on LinkedIn if they have a question outside of this. I'm very notable on LinkedIn. I'm noticed on LinkedIn. So
Indeed. And the last thing I'll say to folks on the phone call is that we'll be following up with a couple things. So first thing, you'll get a recording of this. So if you wanna skip around and find different sections of it, that'll be pretty easy to do. Secondly, we'll be sharing the results of the survey. Again, just we're very sensitive to protecting people's information. This is just by the numbers. We'll basically have a snapshot view of the bar totals, and that's it. Again, hopefully that's helpful for you guys. We'll also be sending just it's a very simple buyer's guide, which says, hey, if you're looking at up-leveling technology, these are some of the things that you really should consider. Again, that's not a sales pitch for utility cloud. There are other products that accomplish, we don't know for certain, but probably accomplish a lot of these things as well. This is for helping the community and making sure that you guys are making the right technology choices. So we'll be sending that out as well. And yeah, anyways, you'll be getting a note with that within the next 24 hours. Always feel free to reach out directly. That email will come from, I believe it's actually from my email address. So feel free to reply directly to me, and I can route you in the right direction if you have specific questions related to this skill series, the cross-connection control in general, our software, what have you. We'll be happy to take care of you. So with that, we are right at the hour, and just want to say thanks to everyone who came on. And for folks who didn't show up, that we'll be having a separate follow-up with them, including this recording as well. So really appreciate it. Everyone have a great rest of your week, and hopefully this accomplished the objectives, and we gave you some tangible advice that you guys can take back today. So appreciate it very much. Thanks all. Thanks, Steve. Really appreciate it.
thanks for having me.